From the Evening Standard in London, this is The Leader.
Evening Standard, it's your Evening Standard.
Hi, I'm David Marsland. It's been a big day for Boris Johnson, and normally political parties get annoyed when events distract from their party conference, especially the leader's speech. For the Tories this year, though, the conference has been a distraction from events.
It has the potential, still, to be what they like to call a one-nation party, but really a modern party, part of representing Britain as it is, not Britain as it used to be. Trouble is, it's drowned out by the Brexit message, and it's also drowned out by that sense they're just spending money they don't have.
Our associate editor, Julian Glover, sifts through the noise to listen to what's actually been happening in Manchester and also assess the chances of whether any of the ideas we've heard can actually be carried out. Also,
Extinction Rebellion! Extinction Rebellion!
Extinction Rebellion have brought London to a standstill before. Now police want to stop them doing it again. Why this newspaper's backing the Met. Bringing you insight and analysis from the Evening Standard's editorial column, this is The Leader. Grab a paper to read it all. It's on page 14 today, or you can head over to standard.co.uk and find it under comment. In a moment, Julian Glover on the troubles facing the Tories.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. If Parliament were a laptop, then the screen would be showing, I'm afraid, the pizza wheel of doom. We are coming out of the EU on October the 31st, come what may. Conference.
At the start of the week, we spoke on this podcast about the cult of Boris Johnson, how its members have dominated the conference, and there was nearly a moderate to be seen. The overwhelming chanting to greet the PM's speech was so obviously coming, I actually wrote this intro when I got into the office at 7:30 this morning. But if you managed to listen through the Boris shouts through the week, there have been some interesting ideas coming from that stage. From today's editorial column, here's what the Standard thinks.
It's telling that his first speech to the assembled Tory tribe as their leader is only the second most important thing Boris Johnson is doing today. Immediately after his address in Manchester, the Prime Minister published details of the Brexit deal he is offering the EU. The Tory conference has felt like a sideshow, but it would be a mistake to ignore it completely. Pay attention, as there have been clues to the future health of one of the leading political parties. Whether any of the Conservative politicians have a chance to implement their ideas is another matter. As the Tories return from their week in the Northern Powerhouse, they will quickly be reminded of their own lack of power to control events.
Our associate editor, Julian Glover's here now. It was Boris's big moment today, Julian. We know that he's wanted this all of his life, and yet it's not even the biggest thing in his diary today.
And he spoke like it as well. It was a very peculiar conference speech. It sounded like a few remarks before dinner or a quick chat to the Rotary Club before everybody slipped off for a gin and tonic. It wasn't the great passionate piece of oratory that we pretend that conference speeches ought to be. But of course, Boris Johnson never does that. He's no good at making speeches. It's one of the strange things about him. He's got a powerful personality, a great turn of phrase. He's a good writer. He's not an orator at all. So he rambled away for a bit and then he finished and everybody wandered off.
And yet we talk about him as being this great asset to the Conservative Party because of how he appears on screen.
I'm not sure who the we is there, but yes, he would like to present himself as the great winner, the great asset. He has this extraordinary personality. There's a power to him, the way he looks, the way he speaks, the way he sounds, the casualness, the turns of phrase, the jokes, the glibness.
If Parliament were a reality TV show, then the whole lot of us, I'm afraid, would have been voted out of the jungle by now. But at least we'd have had the consolation of watching the Speaker being forced to eat a kangaroo testicle.
It's very different to a traditional political leader. Everybody will say, because it's the kind of thing you do say, that in the hall it went down terribly well. Well, I wasn't in the hall, so I can't really tell. All we could see was clips of cabinet ministers grinning inanely and wondering what on earth they've unleashed on the nation. But with the hall, the people there, I'm not sure. Some of them liked a few of his jokes. There were some moderately good jokes in it. But when he said, "We are Europeans," there was pretty much silence. He had to kind of gee them up a bit.
That this is not an anti-European party. This is not an anti-European country. We are European. We love Europe. I love Europe anyway. I love it.
They didn't quite get where he was going with this speech, I think.
And yet, throughout the week, there has been this theme of Boris can do no wrong, really, hasn't there, among the people who were there in the conference? It could be argued that's because the only people who were there were Boris's supporters, after all, though. But there's been a lot of noise, hasn't there?
Oh, yes. I mean, he was obviously popular. He's doing what the party wants now, which is to stand up on Europe. And we say in our leader that this was a successful conference because it really has been. There was some clarity to the message. They tried to focus on things that weren't just Brexit, but to get Brexit done and then look after to the future. There was some interesting speakers. The sense that the party has in its potential in some of the people in the cabinet and in some of the stories it's trying to tell the country, it has the potential still to be what they like to call a one-nation party, but really a modern party, part of representing Britain as it is, not Britain as it used to be, thinking ahead, investment in things. There's a core of that could make a difference. Trouble is, it's drowned out by the Brexit message, and it's also drowned out by that sense they're just spending money they don't have.
There were some really interesting moments. One of the ones brought out in Leader was Sajid Javid addressing his mother.
Yes, we had both the Prime Minister and Sajid Javid talking about their mothers in their speeches. Sajid Javid was more effective, speaking Punjabi, the sense of he's come on a journey. It really cut home. It was the significant moment of the conference, I think.
Can I welcome my mum? 20 years ago, Mum thought it was a big deal when she watched the first Asians move into Coronation Street here in Manchester. Well, now she's watched the first Asians move into Downing Street. Once again, we're living above the shop, but I'm so happy to make her proud. Mummy to kadi socha si apa ete honge. Daddy shop ete hundi. Sorry, that's between us. I forgot you were there.
If the party suddenly needed to look for a different leader, I think he might now be the person they think of turning to. The Prime Minister told us his mother voted for Brexit, and it looked like his father didn't know. Well, that's a different thing.
But we've had lots of interesting ideas coming through from lots of different speakers, not just Sajid Javid, but Matt Hancock expressing his vision for the NHS as well. Will any of this be done, though? There are so many storms swirling around Boris Johnson's government. Does any of this happen after this?
Well, as we say in the Leader today, it is worth looking at the Conservative conference and thinking, what are they trying to talk about and who are the people? Shouldn't just ignore it. But don't spend too long doing that. As the Leader also says, the big thing is Brexit. The big thing is the plan he's meant to be delivering to Europe. Almost as he spoke, I think the plan was being handed over. Is it a plan at all, or is it aimed at just creating a row in order to say we can't do a deal? Well, we'll find out in the next 48 hours, and probably quicker, how it's going down. Doesn't look too good so far. That's the big thing for his future. And if he can get some version of a deal completed and put some version of a deal to Parliament, and there's a huge ifs, then he might be able to turn to some of the other things they tried to talk about at the conference. Until then, it won't work.
Next.
The Met is asking the Home Office if it can amend legislation in various ways to try to make it easier for them to deal with major protests like the Extinction Rebellion and any other protest that tries to adopt a similar tactic.
Extinction Rebellion plan to be back on the streets of London next week. Police now want powers to stop them causing havoc. We're taking a short break. Why not give us a quick rating and subscribe to make sure you get the Leader early? Scotland Yard wants new legal powers to stop Extinction Rebellion and other protesters bringing parts of the capital to a standstill. From the Standard's audio news team, here's Lisa Mannering.
A new movement has emerged on the streets of London and around the world to fight climate change. Thousands of people protested for the first time in the capital in April earlier this year, bringing the city to a standstill. And more of this is being planned by the Extinction Rebellion again next week. 11 sites around Westminster are being targeted as part of protests in 60 countries. Now police want more powers to stop the disruption, as our Home Affairs editor Martin Bentham explains, who was outside Scotland Yard having just had a briefing about the new powers.
What we've learned today is that the Met is asking the Home Office if it can amend legislation in various ways to try to make it easier for them to deal with major protests like the Extinction Rebellion and any other protest that tries to adopt a similar tactic of, in effect, mass disruption and inconvenience to the public. Some of the things they're proposing, which are at an early stage, obviously, but apparently have been received reasonably favourably by the Home Office, include the idea of some sort of restriction or banning order to stop people going back to the scene of a protest repeatedly and just committing the same offences over and over again.
Zion Light is a spokesperson from the Extinction Rebellion movement and says they're trying to save the world.
What we hope to achieve is, first of all, for the government to hear us, for the British government to listen to our demands.
The group hope it's a wake-up call so that people act, change their own lifestyles to help the planet, and put pressure on their politicians to lobby for change corporately.
Extinction Rebellion's 3 demands are: number 1, for the government to tell the truth about the climate emergency; number 2, to bring emissions down to net zero by 2025; and number 3, for the government to create and be led by citizens' assemblies.
In April, the police made more than 1,000 arrests, which saw activists shut down Oxford Street with a pink boat and close Waterloo Bridge by camping out on the structure.
You're under arrest, okay, at the moment for aggravated trespassing. You've been asked to leave.
The protesters hope they're changing hearts and minds on the issue of climate change. Whatever your thoughts on their methods, climate protests are here to stay.
And here's the Standard's take.
Scotland Yard wants new powers to stop protesters blocking London streets. We agree, it needs them. Why? Because today's powers turned out to be useless this spring when Extinction Rebellion protesters brought a lot of central London to a standstill. Next week, Extinction Rebellion promises to return. They will make a powerful case and win some public support. That's the point of a protest. We don't want that to stop, but a city made up of millions of people can't be paralysed by just one group. If they push the rules to the limit, then the rules need to change.
You can hear news updates and regular analysis from our audio news team through your smart speaker. Just ask for the news from the Evening Standard. There's a new bulletin at 7 a.m. every weekday. The Leader's here from 4, and in between you can get in touch through social media with the hashtag #TheLeaderPodcast. We're back tomorrow.